What if Noah was one day late? Part 1. The Haunting Question. There is a question that has intrigued people for centuries. If Noah had been just one day late, would he and his family have made it onto the ark? Or would the entire history of humanity have ended right there in the Great Flood? On the surface, this sounds like a hypothetical question. But to answer it, we must return to what the Bible actually records. Because in the story of the Great Flood, there is a crucial detail that many people often overlook. Time is not something to be toyed with. The Great Flood did not arrive unexpectedly. It was not a storm that appeared overnight. According to the book of Genesis, it was foretold long in advance. The world of that time was vastly different from what we know today. The Bible describes a humanity consumed by wickedness. Violence filled the earth. The thoughts of their hearts were only evil continually. Sin was no longer a personal matter. It had become the face of society. Amidst such a world, the Bible mentions one name: Noah. He was not introduced as the strongest man, the wealthiest, or a king. What set him apart is captured in just a few short lines. He was a righteous man in his generation. He walked with God. That is why the story of the Great Flood begins with him. According to Genesis chapter 6, God decided to end that era with a great flood covering the earth. But before that happened, he did not act immediately. Instead, he gave Noah a very specific command: build an ark. Not a fishing boat, not a wooden raft, but a massive structure capable of preserving his family and all the living creatures brought aboard. The interesting thing is that the Bible does not say Noah designed the ark himself. Every detail was guided by God. The type of wood to be used, the length, the width, the height, 3 decks, a side door, a window above, and the command to coat it with pitch inside and out. This was not just a ship's blueprint, it was a plan prepared in advance. And this leads us to a thought-provoking question. If everything was calculated so precisely, was there any room for delay? Could Noah have said, "I'll finish it tomorrow"? Or, "Being a day late surely won't make a difference"? The Bible repeats one very short sentence multiple times. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. At first glance, this is just a simple narrative statement, but the more we read, the more we realize this may be the key to the entire story. If we ignore this, the one-day-late hypothesis sounds perfectly logical, but if we hold to what the Bible records, we see that time in this story is not random. Every event occurred in exact order, at the right time, by the right plan, no sooner, no later. And then, as we step into the next chapter of Genesis, there is a detail that many readers have inadvertently missed. The Great Flood did not begin immediately after the ark was completed. Between the moment everything was ready and the moment the first raindrop fell, there was a special period of time, and it is that very period that determines whether the question, "What if Noah was one day late?" still holds any meaning. Part 2. How was the ark designed? If someone told you that you were about to build an ark large enough to save life on earth, perhaps the first question would be, where do I start? For Noah, he did not need to guess. The Bible records that God himself provided specific instructions, not general guidelines, but a design with clear parameters. Genesis chapter 6 states, "Make yourself an ark of gopher wood." This is the only time in the entire Bible that this specific type of wood is mentioned. To this day, no one knows exactly what gopher wood is. Some scholars believe it could be cypress. Others suggest it refers to a method of processing wood rather than a specific tree. The truth is, the Bible does not explain further, and that is something we must respect. Next, the dimensions. 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high. Converted to modern units, the ark was approximately 135 meters long, over 20 meters wide, and about 13 meters high, depending on the cubit measurement used. That was a massive undertaking for that era. But more noteworthy is its shape. The Bible does not describe a ship with a bow to cut through waves. No sails, no rudder, no oars. There is no detail suggesting the vessel was designed to travel from place to place. It was not a ship for crossing the sea, but a massive floating chamber designed to survive the waters. Its goal was not speed, but stability. Then the Bible describes the interior: 3 decks, multiple rooms, a side door, a window near the roof, and especially, it had to be coated with pitch inside and out. This is a small but critical detail. The pitch would prevent water from leaking through the hull. This shows the design was not merely symbolic, it was practical. Then, there were the people on board. The Bible clearly states there were only 8. Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their 3 wives. Only 8. No more, no less. Then, the animals. This is often misunderstood. Many still think all species were brought aboard in pairs, but the Bible is more detailed. For clean animals, Noah had to bring 7 pairs. For unclean animals, only 1 pair. The same for birds. This is explicitly stated in Genesis chapter 7. Therefore, the image of 2 of every kind, often seen in paintings or movies, does not fully reflect the biblical account. Another question often asked is, how many years did Noah spend building the ark? Interestingly, the Bible never gives an exact number. There are many theories suggesting it took decades, but those are only inferences based on the age milestones recorded in the Bible. The Bible itself never says, Noah built the ark for X number of years. That is why we should not insist on a number as if it were absolute fact. The only thing the Bible repeatedly emphasizes is, Noah did exactly as God commanded. No adding, no subtracting, no changing. By now, everything seemed ready. The ark was complete. Food had been prepared. The compartments were arranged. Noah's family was ready. But unexpectedly, the great flood had not yet begun. According to Genesis chapter 7, after everything was finished, there was a waiting period of 7 days. What was the meaning of those 7 days? Why did the water not rise immediately? And if Noah had actually been 1 day late, would he have made it inside before the door was shut by God himself? Part 3. 7 days of silence before the rain. Everything seemed complete. The ark stood tall. Food was loaded. Noah's family was ready. The animals were prepared. If it were us, we would probably think. The rain would start immediately, but the Bible tells a completely different sequence. In Genesis chapter 7, God said to Noah, 7 days from now, I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. That is a very specific detail. Not immediately, but 7 days from now. This meant that after receiving the final warning, Noah still had a waiting period. The Bible does not detail how those 7 days unfolded. It does not say what Noah did each day. It does not mention the reactions of those around him. It does not record any conversations. And it is that silence that makes this period so special. We only know one thing. Noah did exactly as God commanded. Then, the Bible begins to mention the animals. It was not that Noah went around to capture them. The text records that they came to him. one by one, just as God had said. Livestock, wild animals, creeping things, birds. Each kind entered the ark. It was a scene that likely had never occurred before in human history. Imagine it, a massive ark sitting in dry land, and all around, countless animals quietly entering. No chaos, no shoving. Everything proceeded in perfect order. But the most notable thing was not the animals. It was the door of the ark. Many movies depict Noah manually closing the door. But that is not what the Bible records. Genesis chapter 7 simply states, "Then the Lord shut him in." Just one sentence, but it carries immense significance. The person who shut the final door was not Noah. It was God. That was the moment the boundary between inside and outside was established. Inside were 8 humans and the creatures brought aboard. Outside was a world that had not yet seen the first raindrop. The strangest thing is, even after the door was shut, the rain had not yet fallen. According to the biblical account, there was still time before the waters began to rise. Perhaps to those on the outside, everything seemed perfectly normal. The sky was the same. The ground was still dry. There were no signs that shortly the entire world would be transformed. Then the day arrived. The Bible records it very precisely. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, on that very day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. Not only rain from the sky, the Bible describes water erupting from the earth. 2 sources of water appeared simultaneously, and then the rain began to fall for 40 days and 40 nights without stopping. Part 4. If Noah had actually been 1 day late. Now, let us return to the question posed at the beginning. What would have happened if Noah had been exactly 1 day late? Before proceeding, it is important to clarify something. The Bible never says Noah was late. On the contrary, it emphasizes repeatedly that he did everything God commanded. Therefore, the following is merely an exercise in reasoning to help us understand the importance of timing in this story. So, let's begin. If the ark was still being built, the first thing is that Noah's family would not have been able to enter. According to the account, entry into the ark took place before the flood began. If the ark were incomplete, that sequence could not have occurred as recorded. Next, the animals. The Bible tells us they entered in accordance with God's command. But if the ark were still incomplete, if the compartments were unfinished, if the provisions had not been loaded, bringing the animals inside would have been futile. Not because the animals did not come, but because the shelter was not ready. Then, the door. This is perhaps the most critical detail. According to the Bible, God Himself shut the door. That only happened after everything was finished. If the ark were not completed, if the people were still outside, that door could not have been shut according to the sequence described. Then came the 17th day of the 2nd month. The springs of the great deep burst forth. The floodgates opened. The waters rose. In this hypothetical scenario, if Noah were still working on the ark, he would not have had time to finish what was left. Because the Bible does not describe the great flood as arriving gradually. As soon as the springs burst and the gates opened, the world entered an unprecedented catastrophe. This leads to another question. Could Noah have tried to finish the ark while the waters were rising? The Bible does not answer that, but based on the sequence of events, the answer seems clear. The entire plan of salvation was executed before the flood began, not while the water was rising. This shows that preparation must be completed before the appointed time, not after. By now, we realize something interesting. The question, what if Noah was one day late? Sounds logical. But the more we compare it to the Bible, the harder that assumption is to sustain, because the entire narrative is built upon a clear foundation. Noah did not act on impulse. He did not do as he pleased. He did not decide the timing. He simply did what God commanded, and because of that, there was no room for delay, no room for, I'll do it tomorrow, no room for, I'll do it later. That is not a detail added by the narrator, but something repeated multiple times in the biblical text itself. But there is one final question. If this scenario is nearly impossible according to the biblical account, why is it still meaningful to ask? Perhaps the answer is not in changing history, but in helping us see the links in the story of the Great Flood more clearly. Part 5. The Real Answer. We can now answer the question posed at the start. If Noah had been exactly one day late, what would have happened? The short answer is, according to the biblical account, it did not happen, and it seems it could not have happened. Not because Noah was a perfect human being, not because he knew the future, but because throughout the entire story, the Bible emphasizes one thing: Noah did everything God commanded. That short sentence explains the entire story. The ark was finished on time. His family entered on time. The animals entered on time. The door was shut on time. And then, the great flood began at the exact moment appointed. If even one link were missing, the entire sequence would not look like what the Bible has recorded. Perhaps that is why the book of Genesis does not spend much time describing the mechanics of shipbuilding. It does not detail each of Noah's working days. It does not record the difficulties he faced. What the Bible wants the reader to remember is not the construction process, but the obedience. Looking back, we also discover a fascinating detail. Many things people pass on about the Great Flood actually do not appear in the Bible. The Bible does not say how many years Noah took to build the ark. It does not describe the reactions of those standing outside when the rain began. It does not tell us what they said to him, nor does it record any dialogue between Noah and the animals. Over time, books, movies, and artworks have added many details to make the story more vivid. But if we read the Bible alone, the story is much more concise and much more powerful. Perhaps it is the conciseness that has allowed the story of the Great Flood to survive for thousands of years. It leaves many pauses, many questions, many things that force us to keep searching. As for today's question, what if Noah was one day late? Perhaps, after all, the answer does not lie in that hypothesis. It lies in what the Bible has recorded. He was not late. He did not delay. He did not change what was commanded. And because of that, the story unfolded exactly as the book of Genesis recounts. Maybe the most interesting part of the story is not what would have happened if Noah were late. It is that the Bible emphasizes time and again that he was never one day late. If you found the story interesting, leave a comment about which character or event in the Bible you would like us to explore next. In upcoming videos, we will continue to compare every detail with the biblical text to distinguish what is actually recorded from what has been added by tradition, film, or later works.